Hello, everyone. This is Noah Flaherty from Vellum, and I'm so excited for you to join me today. I'm going to give folks 2 minutes to trickle in. So we will officially start at 4:02. So thanks so much for hopping in. And if you're joining us now, feel free to just give a little intro of yourself and what you do in the chat. See you shortly. All right, we're going to give a couple folks 1 more minute and start promptly at 4:03. Thanks again for your patience, and thanks so much for joining us. All right, it's time. Let's get going. My name is Noah Flaherty, CTO and co-founder here at Vellum, and this is going to be a collab webinar between Vellum and Cognition, the makers of Devin, the background coding agent. And today we're going to be talking about how Vellum uses coding agents to accelerate the shipping velocity of our engineering teams. So let's welcome our speakers today. Vargas, Eashan, if you want to hop on. I'm joined with David Vargas, our founding engineer here at Vellum, and Eashan Sinha, engineer at Cognition. So thank you both so much for joining. If you are joining us here today, we're going to be sharing all like the nitty gritty details and secrets and secret sauce that we use to accelerate our eng velocity. Cool. Vargas, Eashan, welcome. And
yeah, excited to be here. And I'm full-on believer of background agents, and I just want to see more and more adopting the same mentality.
Sure. Yeah. Nice to meet y'all. Likewise as well. Engineer here at Cognition. I've been working on both Windsurf and Devin. I also work a lot with customers, so excited to share some of the things that we see in the field, some of the things that work best on the Devin side as well. And yeah, excited to talk to you all more about the product.
Awesome. Some quick housekeeping for those joining us live. This webinar is being recorded. If you registered, we'll be emailing a link to the recording after the fact within the next day or two. We'll also be posting this probably on YouTube and sharing the link to that. We are also using a webinar software that allows you to ask questions in the chat or preferably through the Q&A functionality. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a little chat widget in the top right, and then Q&A right below. If you have specific questions that you want to ask us, put them in the Q&A. We'll either answer them live or strategically save some for the end. And we've got 10 nice minutes at the end of this webinar where we'll go through any that we did not answer live. In the chat, we encourage folks to make this a bit more interactive, introduce yourselves, say where you're coming from, and what it is that you're hoping to get out of this. And we can kind of like guide what we talk about based on the interest of those joining us live. But without further ado, let's get going. So I guess quick agenda, pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about our software engineering agent journey here at Vellum, kind of what the before times looked like and what the nowadays looks like. It's just incredible how quickly this industry has progressed and how much our behavior on an engineering and product design team has changed over the last 6 to 12 months. We'll talk specifically about how we use these coding agents, software engineering agents, breaking it down between foreground agents, background agents, and code review agents. We use a mix of all of them. And we'll do our best to share our playbooks for how we've maximized the leverage and impact that these coding agents can give us. And while we might not have like source code to share, we'll try to share our screens and really give interactive walkthroughs of some of the tooling that we built to get the most out of what's possible. That's the game plan. So starting with our journey, kind of like the before times and after. So before software engineering agents, we're talking not that long ago. This is Vargas. When did we pull this stat? May? Yeah, May.
Yeah. So May 2025.
So really like not all that long ago, our engineering team of about 13, 15 engineers, something like that, shipped or merged 946 PRs across all of our repos. Respectable, solid. At the time, we weren't using Devin. We weren't really using Claude Code. We weren't using Codex. We were using Cursor and GitHub Copilot for more like auto-complete, so like tab to complete a line of code. But that's not all that long ago. So 946 PRs across 15 or so engineers. You do the math. More recently, in October, we merged over 1,900 PRs. That's over a 2x increase in just like overall PR count. And that's very much largely, we didn't change the number of engineers really all that much. And I'd say the average PR count per engineer over 2x. And that's almost entirely thanks to our adoption of foreground, background, and PR review coding agents. Specifically, I'd say a lot of this value is from these background coding agents, and we use Devin from Cognition almost exclusively here at Vellum for our background coding agents. So of those over 1,900, about 37% of those PRs were initiated through background agents, meaning we kicked it off directly through Devin. The ability.
I also want to call out that like 6 months before May, that where that May stat was taken, we had started looking at Devin and some of these tools, and just decided that like it was hard for us to like get one PR like over the line back then, and just seeing the like progression that these models and these companies and these agents have made over like the 6 months of when we were like first contemplating it to when we started adopting it was pretty astounding.
Yeah. I guess like your takeaway for that from this slide should be like, if you haven't evaluated coding agents, specifically background agents in the last 6 months or so, it's probably about time to give them another look, especially if you're willing to invest in some of the tooling that we're about to share here today. Eashan, anything you want to add or takes you have?
Yeah, I would also say that +1 to what you all said. I think for me at first, it was a little bit of a learning curve to understand how to properly use background agents. But then once I got the hang of it, I started using it for so many things. Like I never write my own tests anymore. Background agents just kind of handle all of that, for me. And then even for like PR reviews and a ton of other things, like background agents just do the job well enough and save me so much time, and allow me to focus on the things that I want to be working on, things that I want to be a little bit more in sync with, in the loop with. And so ever since I've been starting using background agents like Devin consistently, it's just been a game changer for me productivity wise, in terms of like helping me in my shipping velocity.
Cool. Appreciate that. So, we've been tossing these words around. Let's get some vocab straight in case it's not apparent. We've been saying foreground agents, background agents, and code review agents. These aren't like perfect vocab words, and I'm not claiming to have coined them, but that's the words we're going to use. So foreground agents, just to be clear, Foreground agents are things like your Claude Code or your Cursor, where you are sitting in front of a chat sort of interface and interacting in a tight feedback loop with the coding agent. So, for example, if I pull up my cursor here and share my screen super briefly, I might use Cursor to start a session where, okay, it just did some updates on me. Anyway, I might be chatting back and forth and talking to the agent, and on each turn of the conversation, providing feedback and iterating. Crucially, with Foreground agents, you work on tasks in serial, much like traditional engineering. You take on a task, you go into a deep flow state, you're focusing, and you work on the task until you're ready to put up a PR. With background agents, what we mean by that is we're kicking them off kind of asynchronously and not directly engaging until a PR has been put up. So the background coding agent is doing all the work that it needs to do until it's able to put up a PR, and then we give it a PR review, much like hiring an intern or another engineer and just giving them a well-scoped, well-defined task, and then giving them a code review once they think it's ready. And then code review agents are pretty self-explanatory. It's once a PR is opened, being able to go, or like having an agent give the first pass of PR feedback, often prior to when a human might. So we use all three. That's our vocab or our distinction between them. We're going to be focusing today primarily on background agents, but I do want to touch briefly on how we use the other two. Foreground agents, this is probably where we're going to spend the least amount of time because it's probably what you're most familiar with if you're joining this webinar. I've already kind of talked about them. You might use Claude Code and do it through a shell, or use Cursor, and you're picking up a task and chatting back and forth with that coding agent until the task is done, and you open up PR. Let's see, some things that we like to use. So we still use Foreground agents a lot. I'd say when it comes to like adoption rate of foreground versus background agents, it varies largely based on the individual engineer, their preferences, the nature of their work, and their behavior patterns. Using background agents is more of like a mindset shift from traditional engineering. Foreground agents are more similar to traditional engineering, where you enter, like I said, a deep focus block and you work on one thing, and it's more similar to how a lot of engineers are used to working. Whereas, as we'll talk about, background agents are more about parallelizing work and spawning lots of work streams in parallel, switching between them and keeping your agents unblocked. And it's a larger or a bigger behavior change as compared to how traditional software engineering is done. Having said that, there are still quite a few use cases that foreground agents, at least today, are still really useful for. This is my personal opinion, but if you want very quick iteration on UIs where you want to tweak styling and see the changes immediately and use your taste and your judgment as a UI engineer to make tweaks to that UI, oftentimes I, at least personally, can find myself iterating more quickly towards a really slick looking UI using a foreground agent as compared to the kind of like longer iteration cycles of using a background agent. That's not unique to UIs. Anything where you want really, really fast feedback cycles and you want to stay in a serial work stream across those really fast iteration cycles, foreground agents are still a good way to go. More and more, we're seeing that the benefits of parallelizing at the cost of reducing iteration time, or like increasing iteration time, but also increasing parallelism is net more like higher output. But certain types of work still really useful to have super tight, fast feedback loops with your coding agents. The other thing I personally find foreground agents useful for still today is like prototyping, spiking, and more like R&D type work for similar reasons. You want to like test a hypothesis, quickly see if it works. Like maybe you're not even sure what the approach should even be. Even that though, like Vargas is smirking because like we're seeing background agents like come up with approaches that we would have never thought of. And it's actually kind of cool to see what it comes up with first sometimes.
Yeah, I'll sometimes just like give it just like an ambiguous like end goal without like and just see like see what it tries to implement first, and then that will like spark the idea of like, oh, okay, here's like just the set of approaches. Or maybe I will even use that as like part of a TDD it's like a draft PR not meant to be merged in, and it's just like a reference that the TDD will use to like help convey an idea.
Yeah, a good example. Literally today, I asked Devin to research our code base and come up, like not even open a PR, just like help come up with a plan and a strategy for migrating from Next.js's page router to app router, and like how to do that incrementally and at low risk. And a year ago, I would have had to do a bunch of research and like reading of docs, and I would have never done it, honestly. We just wouldn't migrate. But now it's like pretty tractable. Eashan, anything you want to add on, like when you're finding that foreground agents are still a good workflow?
For sure. Yeah, I think what you mentioned, Noah, about being in the loop of wanting that like fast, iterative, quick feedback loop where you see a change immediately be reflected in the UI, or where you're like deep in some like very dense conversation or some very like deep work where a lot of like the human intelligence and brain is required to push an agent forward, or where an agent would actually need a little bit more handholding. That's where I see myself using something like a Windsurf or another synchronous like local coding agent. And then once I get to a point where I'm confident that the AI or the agent is aware of what I'm trying to accomplish, then I could go ahead and be like, hey, Devin, why don't you just go ahead and tackle this problem? And I have like a much more detailed prompt to send to it. I've built all this context that now I can just go ahead and send to Devin. And the agent is now fully aware of like what I'm trying to accomplish. And so to just reiterate on kind of what you said earlier, if there's like a task I'm very confident the agent would be able to accomplish just, one off with a simple prompt, I would just go straight to Devin. Otherwise, something that requires me to be more in the loop, I will stick to Windsurf. And then if necessary, or if I feel like we get to a point where the agent's able to accomplish that, I can go and send all of that context and that prompt to the background agent. But yeah, everything you all were mentioning, very similar experiences on my end.
Cool. If you're kind of just like beginning to dip your toes into the world of adopting coding agents, foreground agents are a good place to start. They typically require less investment to get up and running initially, less like tooling upfront, and also you have greater oversight. So it's a good foray into the world of adopting coding agents. All right, I'm going to keep moving us along though, and talk about code review agents. As opposed to foreground agents, where our team uses pretty much every version of them under the sun, and we're like pretty not opinionated or strict with our engineering team about which foreground agent they use. Code review agents, we've actually experimented with a lot less, to be honest, with folks here. We pretty much just use Codex. We use Codex. It works well. We're happy with the results. There's a lot of other really great offerings out there. Eashan, I'm sure you can speak to Cognitions. I just want to be transparent. We haven't actually evaluated a ton of them, but what I'm going to share is our learnings from using Codex as a code review agent. First and foremost, once again, like this space has adapted a lot in even the past, I'd say 3 months, 4 months, maybe. Like we've been really blown away by the value we get out of code review agents these days. So much so that two big reasons. One, they are quite literally like catching bugs that human reviewers aren't catching and that we would have never caught. And I'll show a couple examples. And two, it's helped increase our velocity because it's kind of changed what the goal of PR reviews are for us on our Eng team. PR reviews used to serve many purposes, and they still do. They served context sharing with other engineers. They helped ensure kind of like a cohesion of patterns and best practices across our repos. And of course, code reviews helped catch bugs. But nowadays, we rely on human reviews a lot less for bug catching. We rely on human PR reviews primarily at this point for context sharing. And so what that allows us to do is basically rely primarily on code review agents for actual PR reviews. So typically, we'll open a PR, code reviewing agent will review the PR, find actual issues, find patterns where we're not doing the right thing. We address that feedback, merge it, so oftentimes without a human review, and then humans will still review it post-push for context sharing, knowledge gathering, and just like making sure that there's cohesion throughout our code base. So being able to catch actual issues quickly prior to merge, but still get the benefits of code reviews post-merge has allowed us to increase our velocity as well. Because as a result, we're not waiting necessarily for, depending on the risk level of the PR, we're not necessarily waiting on human reviews for every single PR that we open.
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I actually use a lot of local agents to review PRs or to review changes. I'm curious, how often do you all use, a local agent to review via like GitHub CLI, right? You can pull a lot of those details down. I also like do a lot of I address a lot of comments via the GitHub CLI directly in Windsurf. My go-to is just to go ahead and spin up Devin to review any PRs, but a lot of times when I want a little bit more granularity, when I want to dive in a little bit deeper, I will use Windsurf to work with me synchronously
Cool.
on PR reviews. I'm curious, like, how often do you all do that too?
Vargas, I'll speak for myself. I personally, not that much actually. The pattern I'm seeing emerge on our team is we're opening PRs through background agents like Devin, having something like a Codex review them, and then telling Devin to iterate based on the feedback from Codex. So it's kind of agents working with agents, and having different agents collaborating with each other actually helps avoid some of the limitations of specific agents.
Yeah, and also, we'll see this a lot more once I start screen sharing on the background agents front, but I'm trying to spend as little time on a per task basis as possible. And so if I'm not only iterating on the implementation, but then also iterating on the review, that's more synchronous time being spent on one thing, which means there are less things happening at any one time in parallel. And right now, like the objective function that I'm trying to optimize for is how many units of work can I have going in parallel at once.
Yeah. So just like we're trying to lean on coding agents to open the PR in the first place and parallelize that, we're also trying to parallelize our PR reviews through the use of background agents for the reviews.
I love that. I love that. One thing that I saw working well for me and other customers is if you tell Devin that a different agent, or if you can tell whatever PR review bot, or sometimes I tell Windsurf that a different developer or a different agent wrote this PR. Sometimes if it sees Devin, it will naturally be biased to thinking that it wrote it correctly. Or sometimes if it sees that you wrote it, or if you say, hey, I created this PR, then it'll be biased to just, what's the word for it? I think it just agrees with everything you say, right? Or like it kind of, I think it's like sycophantic, I think is the word. Yeah. It'll just say that you were right about everything. And so when I tell it that another developer, or I say that another coding agent or another model wrote this PR, a lot of times it would be a little bit more critical, and it will find a lot of things that normally it wouldn't find or address or raise as a bug or potential issue that I should actually go in and review after that. So that's just like something that I saw in the field working pretty well.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Just to share a couple of real world examples here. Let's see, make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I'm just going to flick through a couple PRs. These are like real PRs where this was a simple copy change. So Devin opened this PR and Codex, we have some automation that automatically tags Codex to review a PR. Codex finds completely unrelated copy that should probably be updated as a result of this logical change. So in the what's cool about this is as a human reviewer, you would look at the diff and there would be nothing in the diff that tells you that nothing in the diff is wrong. You would just completely miss this entirely. But a code review agent that has complete context of your whole repo knows hey, you're making a logical change. You should update this other copy as a result. So who knows how many months this copy would have been out of date 6 months, if in the old world, in the before times without a coding review. These I'm just going to flick through as well. This is on our open source repo. You can check out this PR for yourself if you want to see the details. But this is a really nuanced bug that none of us humans would have ever found. And
it's actually a symptom of the same thing that you observed. It's another example of the same thing you just talked about in the previous one, where the biggest step change about these code review agents is that they can review files that are not in the file diff. And so this bug that it caught wasn't a bug in any of the line diffs. It was a downstream method that was in a separate file that would get that would have gotten busted and was confirmed to be busted with once we iterated with a new test to catch it, had the coding agent not raise the comment in the moment.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool to like, you know, the agent that initially opens the PR has a lot of different tools and context at its disposal as compared to the agent that's reviewing the PR. So it's actually a really great checks and balances sort of system we're finding here between your coding agents. These are just like more bugs. Like this one's actually quite comical. Here, my co-CTO opened the PR. 3 senior engineers and myself reviewed and approved the PR. And then Codex found like a really bad bug in the PR that none of us spotted or found. So it's like, despite our best efforts with like really great people, really well-intending, smart, great engineers with a ton of context at Vellum, we still just like miss stuff that these code review agents are finding. So suffice to say, we're like big believers that code review agents are a great way of catching issues, regardless of whether it's a human or another coding agent initially opening the PR. And like I said, we've done no evaluation of the tools that are out there. So I encourage folks to try out the solutions Cognition provides. There's other great tools like CodeRabbit, and Cursor has their own, and there's all sorts of tools out there to do code review. We're not super knowledgeable about the pros and cons of the different ones. All right, let's get into the meat of it. We're already almost halfway through. Let's talk about background agents. So I'd love to turn it over to Vargas and Eashan to talk about background agents and how we've instrumented them here at Vellum.
Yeah, so sharing my screen now. In true background agent fashion, I'm just going to take a random ticket from our backlog and say, hey, can you open a PR that closes? And I'm just going to paste it, and I'll let Devin get to work while we talk about the rest of our Devin use, because this is the unlock of background agents. This is just set it into the abyss and get on with your day. So let's get on with our day. I first want to talk about like setting up your Devin machine. So the most important like core unit for getting the most out of Devin is investing in Devin's machine, like investing in their computer. They snapshot, and you can look here in Devin's machine version history. They snapshot every time you like go in and like make some change, whether it's like install a library, add a script, add some environment variables, whatever change you make to the machine, they snapshot a version of it. And then it's that machine that Devin uses to then work on the task that you have. The very first thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to like connect your org's GitHub account to Devin, and once that's set up, any repo that is like worth having Devin work on, you'll want to use their like add repo functionality to add it to the snapshot. And they have a specific flow here. Actually, instead of doing that, let's just go to an existing one. So this is our main repo. They have a specific flow of where you can like set up certain like setup commands and like tests and lints or whatever, so that the agent has a leg up in knowing like how to operate in that repo. And this gets into like the first like suite of like tools that we started developing as soon as we started adopting Devin, is one line commands to do each of these interfaces. So before adopting Devin, linting our repo, we have a back end, we have a front end, we have some like ad hoc handlers, we have some like even like a full other like playwright setup for end-to-end tests, like running lint commands it's like a multi-stage thing. And what using coding agents like sort of forces you to do is it forces you to consolidate into a single command that the agent can use to like quickly do everything that it needs to do. And so like, for example, this make lint command like does the linting across all the different parts of the repo. You can see like in our dependency update, like a version of like the pre-consolidation. So like in this example, I have one that's pre, one's post, where we have to do like a couple of different steps across multiple folders in the repo, and more we're trying to standardize sort of a like repo interface. We're trying to like consolidate around a like common language that each of our repos communicate, so that it is a consistent language that the Devin agent can communicate with. The other really important file within the Devin machine is a root .envrc file. That envrc file is just like basically any like environment variables or credentials that you want the agent to have in order to do things with your app. So for example, we created a linear API key, a Google email address, and a Google password, and we like created like a whole user account for Devin called Devin AI at Vellum.ai, so that it can use those credentials when like logging into our app and like doing QA, like self QA of its own work.
Vargas, quick thing that I wanted to add here. When you're actually setting up a repo on Devin's machine, there's an agent that will help you through the setup process. So a lot of times, people don't feel like giving all these commands initially to Devin, or they don't know what the right commands would be, especially if they're a new developer working on an existing repository. And so Devin's agent now, when you add a repository, it will actually walk you through, or it will actually give you recommendations on what the commands should be. And then if you do know the repo well, then you can kind of confirm or deny Devin setup agent suggestions. And this is something that I found to be really helpful. It's also sped up the repo setup process a ton, and just allows you to be able to get started working on your repository as fast as possible. So yeah.
And I think that I actually remember us advocating for something like that, because when we got set up in May, we had to specify each of these steps like manually, and so that's super dope that now you can like just have the AI just like figure it out based on readmes and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a relatively newer feature, but it helps a ton. Let's see. It looks like, yeah, there you go. There's a setup agent. So whenever you want to get started, it can just help you set up your whole repository. And normally I'm just like tabbing through, just clicking next, because it just figures out all the commands that I want to give to Devin's machine.
Very cool.
Yep.
Cool. So let's talk about some some other goodies we have here. So if I go to my sessions, I want to go to this one. So we have been developing what's called like a single like make up command. And this is we have a, as maybe a lot of complex applications do nowadays, we have a pretty complex like microservice architecture, Docker containers and web apps and like small little handlers and a bunch of little components that make up the app. And right now the local development story to like do basic development, at least of what it was like 6 months ago, was pretty horrendous. You gotta like have like 10 tabs open or in your terminal and like have like all these different services running. We are now developing, at least on our end, a like makeup command, which first starts with like setting up all the dependent like Docker containers that we depend on, followed by a like database like initialization. So what are all the migrations we need to run? What are all the prod configs that we need to add, that we need to pull from prod and add to our local repo or local database in order to get up and running? What are some like local integrations that we need to set up? All that good stuff. And then we, at the end, run, I don't know if you've like run like use like run concurrently or npm packages like that, but we have somewhat of our own homebrew one which takes all of our like dev servers and runs them all in parallel, so that we have a consolidated view of everything that's being run, and so that Devin has like a single place to read from logs and be able to iterate off of this one place, while also like making it easier for devs locally to get going quickly. One cool thing that Devin allows for is this like trace on the left hand side, and so as Devin is like doing work, you can see it actually it can like emit like bash commands. It can actually like click on elements in the like have its own browser, like actually like, navigate the web. You can see here that like it's like actually logging in based on the like credentials that we had set up in our like .envrc. And right now we have it going as far as like loading up the app, but not as consistently as we wanted. So we're still making iterations there. Once Devin finishes the like a given task, one other automation that we've built out is this idea of a preview environment. So more and more as the burden or as the level of effort required to write software and write code goes down, we're seeing, at least internally, a huge emphasis in the quality control of the output that it generates before we get to merge into main. One way to address that is tests, but as Noah mentioned, there's UI changes that you want to do, and it's hard to like QA UI from just like a visual code perspective. And so we have a preview environment system set up such that for every PR in the Vellum repo, we are creating this like app.pr7 dash PR number .previews.vellum.ai, and that creates a completely standalone environment, very similar to like how Vercel does it with their preview environments, that we can go in and navigate through the app on the right hand side. We have found
this is really cool.
Yeah, we have found this to be like vital for like QAing like Devin PRs without needing to like pull it locally or even like to do it on mobile. Like being able to just like click on the preview environment that it creates and just like poke around on mobile to make sure that like the change it's doing is actually doing what it claims to do.
That's awesome. Have you guys, I mean, this is really cool. Have you guys tried giving Devin access to this preview URL as well, so that it can actually go and click around?
We haven't, we haven't fed this PR link back to Devin yet, right? Right now we're trying to get the local environment into a stable place.
I see.
Because of the fact that like when it starts its development, like the PR environment doesn't exist, right? The PR environment only exists like once Devin creates the PR, and so we have it working. So we're trying to iterate on the local environment and get that really good, and then maybe after that, give it access to the PR environment, so that when I leave comments or like I leave feedback for Devin, it has a place to like go and like double check and it can navigate between the two.
One thing I'd add here is like there's a really cool like two birds, one stone that goes on with like giving these background coding agents tooling and making the quality of life and developer experience for your engineers better. Like they kind of go hand in hand. In order to get Devin working to its fullest, we had to build tooling and scripts and make up commands and stuff, Docker app commands, things like that our engineers really want to, and that like makes us more effective even locally. In fact, you see this in the industry at large too. You see companies like Anthropic acquiring Bun to like make faster the JavaScript runtime, as an example, right? Just to increase the speed of like compile times and runtime, so that their coding agents can iterate more quickly. And I think that that's going to like be a flywheel that we see spinning faster and faster and faster. Like developer tooling and quality of life getting better as a byproduct of trying to empower background coding agents.
For sure.
In the theme of context engineering, we've also have started writing some scripts in our Vellum, in like our main repo that Devin can have access to in order to get more context. So one example, this was written before the MCP marketplace was released by Devin. So it's likely that the MCP marketplace would be a better home for this nowadays, but
Vargas, could you zoom in a couple clicks for the audience here?
Yeah. Oop, one. Yeah. So this is so we are a Django shop. Django has a set of a set of management commands, and we've been adding a ton of different management commands that give Devin a bunch of different ways to go access data from other resources that we have. This one is centered around the linear ticket, and so what you'll see is that Devin will use this to just fetch the content of the ticket and get everything that it needs in order to basically like know what's going on in that ticket. If we go back to the session that we started, and it looks like we're already done there. We have a linear lookup, or we have a knowledge item for Devin that instructs it's like whenever you're given a linear ticket, run that command from the Vellum repo to go get the contents of it, regardless of like what repo it's in. And so this is, for example, this is a PR that's actually in our SDK repo, which is public and open source, and our command is in our like main like private repo, and so it's using the management commands in one repo to be able to like get info for work that it's doing in other repos. This knowledge section I didn't touch on. I kind of briefly touched on, but
I imagine like this world has evolved a lot since we first did this. Do you want to share like probably what the current state of the world is?
I was just about to mention. So first of all, Vargas, like you all are ahead of the game in the fact that you all built your own sort of linear integration. We realize that a lot of enterprises as well also use something like a Jira or Linear. So not only do we add in the MCP marketplace, which just makes it easier for Devin to have like bidirectional communication with Linear or Jira or any of these other services, but we also built a direct integration with Linear. So if you go to integrations right there on the left side, you'll see you can actually link Linear to Devin, and then we actually spawn a lot of Devin sessions directly from Linear. And Devin has all the context, just pulls all of that. And we really, you know, especially for people who don't want to have to take that context, copy and paste it to Devin, you could just @mention Devin or tag Devin on the Linear ticket, and Devin will just start working on it. It will gather the context. It will kind of ask you a few questions, tell you its confidence level, and then from there, you can decide whether Devin is ready or not to execute on that task. And so honestly, a lot of times when we are dealing with bugs or even like new features, we are just directly tagging Devin in Linear, and Devin is just going ahead, spawn directly from Linear and working on that task. And then same thing, returns a PR for us to review.
Yeah, we use the Slack integration a lot too, right? Like you can, like somebody reports a bug in Slack, you just like @mention Devin right from within Slack, spawn a ticket.
Yep.
I think like the moral of this story is Devin has a lot, like Devin and these other platforms out there have a lot of native integrations, which you should always check out first. But there's often really good escape hatches if you need to feed in context or perform actions that maybe there's not a native integration for at the time. So,
we have, so we have the Devin agent installed here, right? We have some developers use the Devin linear integration. I think right now the Devin linear integration requires you to like confirm the plan before it like goes off and use it, and so that like extra friction has people going like entering the ticket directly in the session. But some people actually prefer the plan. Like some people want to like have the plan like laid out for them before Devin goes and tackles it.
Yep.
Noah mentioned the Devin Slack integration. Here's an example that that I had saved up and of like us using it. This is particularly great if like things just come up, like a sentry error comes up, and or things that just like that arrive to try to ruin your day, and you just don't want to let that happen, and so you just tag Devin to like go deal with it instead, and then you can go back to like what you actually had planned for that day. 15-20 minutes later, Devin will have the like fix ready for you to then iterate and resolve the issue that came up.
I love this. Yeah, this is honestly a lot of how we're doing, bug fixes and even feature development to some extent as well. If there is literally something we want to change that is pretty minor, someone will just like say something very vague in Slack, and then we will just tag Devin, and Devin will just go ahead and start executing on the task. Sometimes Devin will start asking us a few questions, and then we just like interact with Devin in that same Slack thread, the same way we would with an engineer. Which I think for me, when I started using Devin and started tagging in Slack, that was like a very powerful thing, and I started getting addicted to it almost to a fault where now I had to spend so much time reviewing all these things that Devin was doing from me just simply tagging Devin, 5 or 10 times a day in Slack. But I'm happy to see that you all use that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Here is the ticket that I sent at the beginning of the call, and based on my cursory review of it, it added a test, which I always want. It made sure that we are passing in the correct params for the API, and it actually looks good. So
What did Codex say?
What's up?
What did Codex say?
Let's see what Codex said. Codex did not find any issues, so Codex also is approving of this PR. So this is the Noah mentioned how like the Codex review allows us to like move faster because of post-push review. This is a great example of one where it passes my gut check. I mark it ready for review. I'll tag the relevant members of my team to give it a look. We have a knowledge item for formatting the like description of the PR that we've seen mixed results on like whether Devin abides by it or not. Ideally, we want to just be able to do like a quick summary and then some like context on like what of like who requested it. And so sometimes I'll come in here and just clean it up for the like post-push reviewers. And then I'll just like merge it in with the knowledge that these that those members of our team will give it a look when they get around to it.
Yeah, one thing, Vargas, I'm curious to see if this works a little bit better. If you create a playbook that details how PR descriptions should be written, and then in some knowledge file, you can just tell, or you just tell Devin to reference that playbook. If you to get to playbooks, you just go to settings, and then it's the tab right underneath knowledge.
Tab right underneath
at the
knowledge.
top, right above secrets. Yeah, right there. So yeah, you can create a playbook that just kind of gives Devin a step-by-step rundown of how it should do something like write a PR description, and then in a knowledge little bucket, you can kind of give Devin or tell Devin to reference that playbook. Maybe that will work better. I've seen better results using something like that rather than putting it in knowledge. Because yeah, knowledge, the way I like to think about it, it's like Devin's brain. It's like storage of things that it's remembered over time or things that you've given directly to it. But playbooks are the way Devin should actually operate. So the way Devin should behave given a certain situation, certain scenario. And so that's why for things that I want to have a much more standardized process for, I'll use playbooks for, like testing or documentation, PR descriptions, all those types of things. I would write up a playbook for that and give that to Devin.
And Eashan, let me ask you this: what, to whatever extent you're comfortable sharing, like what is the low level, like the under the hood implementation of like playbook versus knowledge? Because I think that would help inform us. Like basically, like how does the agent know when to use each one? Because I think that knowing a little bit of like the implementation details there will help inform our use of like when we should lean on playbooks and when we should lean on knowledge.
For sure, yeah. So a lot of it, to be fully frank, is just prompt engineering at the end of the day. Like how you would prompt engineer knowledge versus playbook. Knowledge, it's like snippets of things that in the agent you would want it to remember about, like maybe preferences or about how things about your code base or about certain standards and things like that. Playbooks are again more of like a step-by-step process on how it should accomplish a certain task. Playbooks, normally you actually manually invoke them. So you manually invoke them via like a exclamation mark, and then you'll have a list of the playbooks you can select. In a knowledge description, even just by giving it, like just saying like use exclamation mark PR review or PR description playbook, Devin will see that, and then in Devin's machine, it has all these things stored, right? Which include knowledge, include playbooks, and under the hood, Devin is instructed, hey, this is how you should view a playbook. And this is how you should view knowledge. Knowledge is like additional information. A playbook is how you should do something. So it's not going to look at every playbook at once. It's going to look at that given playbook if you manually invoke it, or if it's in like some knowledge description, or in like any of your Devin API calls or anything. If you tell it to use a playbook, it will reference that playbook and it will treat it as like that standardized set of steps and process to accomplish that task or subtask or whatever you want it to do.
Got it. Makes sense. So knowledge is always like accessible. Like it'll search for it when it's relevant. Playbooks are very specific and need to be referenced. That's super helpful.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to shift gears now to how we helped like onboard a lot of our engineers here to be able to like start adopting these tools. We at Vellum have our own script and channel for like Vellum for like PR count, and so this is how we pull together the like counter that you saw in the beginning, and we also have started flagging like which ones were like made by bots, and so we are sort of starting to gamify adoption to like help encourage more use within the org.
Yeah, with it, we had a good question in the chat. Like, let me just read it off here. PRs could indicate velocity at some level, but I wonder if you have a metric which demonstrates feature delivery more fully, or does a PR represent a meaningful unit of work for end users? So PRs do not represent meaningful units of work for end users. We love as small and as incremental PRs as possible that really build off one another and are like logical units that can be shipped independently. And by shipped, I mean merged. We make heavy use of feature flags to hide works in progress from our end customers. And I'll be I'm not going to try to get into a religious argument with anyone here on is PR count the best metric, but I will say that we value that metric heavily here at Vellum, and over a lot of experience at this point and seeing things done many different ways, I've become a huge believer in a high degree of correlation between PR count and end feature delivery and user value. So I don't think anyone can convince me otherwise at this point that more PRs is a bad thing. And so especially if you're able to highly parallelize small units of work across coding agents and scale the level of output non-linearly with the size of your engineering team or the number of hours that humans are putting in.
Yeah, like most things, and user value is a like report card of many metrics, of which we view PR count as one, but not sufficient. And so there are many other metrics you can use, level of bugs, linear tickets closed, but this is one that is probably most pertinent to the content of the webinar. I want to touch on some maybe one more item around experiments we've tried, and then open it up to any further questions. And so some other experiments we've tried doing here. I'm going to pull it up. we had a management command for a background Devon session that once a day will find a ticket on linear that is of medium priority, like any of them at random, and then just create a session. And we had this going for once a day, then we scaled it back to once a week. So you can think of this as just like an ambient like coworker, just like finding something in the backlog and implementing it. The issue we found with this is that not always right now getting PRs to merge still require like a good amount of review, and we are still battling. Probably our top problem to solve when dealing with background agents here at Vellum is this problem around priority. How do we address? How do you tackle all of these sessions in a way that like reflects the priorities of the business and not treat random refactors on the same level of priority as like a big feature release that's coming out next week?
Eashan, it's kind of like what you're saying. You're opening like 5 to 10 sessions a day through Slack. At the end of the day, like still somebody's reviewing it or pulling it down to test locally and make sure the UI looks good or something. And so there's still that human bottleneck to some degree, especially for things that require a human to like download the context of what the agent is now doing. If you haven't touched that part of the code base for a while, and yet you're still ultimately responsible for the quality of that product area, and your AI agents are opening PRs for code you haven't touched in forever, that's like still a context switch to make to own the ultimate quality.
For sure.
Cool. Eashan, do you have any? We'd love to ask you about like where you guys see this all going. So like where, like what do you guys view as like the future of software development? Like how do you think this like evolves over the next year? Like what would you love to see from your customers too?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of thoughts, and honestly, there's so many things that could change that could redirect this industry in terms of like what where software engineering agents are going, where the industry of software engineering really is going. I think it really is dependent on a few different pillars or I'd say like buckets where I think it would really drive the direction of software engineering. I think one is model quality and capabilities. I think as the models get better, we are seeing that Devon's able to do more and more things. It's able to use its effective context window a lot better than it was able to previously, right? So some models say they have a 1 million token context window, right? But like how much of that context window is actually effective, right? How much can it actually look at in an appropriate or be able to give appropriate attention to detail across, at a certain point, a lot of these models, even if they can hold 1 million tokens of context, they're only able to look at like 50K or 100K at once, right? And actually be able to do anything with that information. So I think like models getting better is one thing. I think the next thing is really seeing like how I think software engineering processes will change. So I think you all have talked about this a good bit today, as well as have implemented this in your day-to-day as well. Like a lot of review, building tooling for developers, and also making sure that there's a lot of emphasis on things like planning and structuring your code bases properly, modularizing things in the right way, right? Naming things correctly, so that in the future, when we do want to just deploy agents into our code base and have it work on coding related tasks or discovery or bug fixes and things like that, it's not confused by anything that we did a long time ago or anything that we named poorly, right? So in some way, it makes us better software engineers in terms of using the best practices, right? Like we want to not have these 10,000 files, 10,000 line files, 10,000 lines of code, long files, right? Like that's just way too much. Instead, like modularize your code base, make sure things are structured properly. And so agents, just like how a human engineer would best be able to develop on it, agents would also be able to develop pretty well. And I think the third thing is like the form factors. This is something that's a little bit more interesting. Cognition, we have multiple products that sit on a bunch of different form factors, right? We have an IDE, we have our Devon web app, we spin up Devon from a ton of different other interfaces. So what is the right form factor? I think it really just depends on the developer, but also I think closing that outer loop, so giving the context to agents from things like Slack, from Notion, from Google Drive, from SharePoint, where a lot of engineers, for example, like I will go to Slack and ask questions to a senior engineer, or I'll go to Notion and look at like documentation that we've developed over the course of the last year or the last like few months, right? Similarly, if we can allow agents to go in and ingest that information and then be able to tackle any tasks, I think that is how we can better equip software engineering agents to have context, or the same context that a normal engineer would also have. And then I think the last point on that, in terms of what will really make it very good in the future, is closing the loop in terms of verifiability. So how can we make sure these agents are actually accomplishing the tasks that we wanted it to do, essentially, right? So like that's why we built Devin's browser agent, and that's why we also built Devin's computer use agents, because now we realized by building and testing Windsurf, we wanted Devin to be able to like send screen recordings to us of Windsurf running locally. So now Devin is able to open up its own computer or its own OS and able to like open up Windsurf, repro a bug, send us a recording of it and saying like, hey, this is something that I also faced too, or this is the implementation of the fix and here's a recording of it fixed. And this loop is something that is not only helpful for us, but extremely helpful for the agents to give it the second set of eyes. And I think software engineering agents having this ability to look at all of this context, just like a human engineer would, I think that's what's really going to take it to the next level. Again, a lot of this is dependent on model capabilities and quality, right? I think the last thing I'll mention here is when Sonnet 4.5 came out, we redesigned Devin's harness, right? To make it simpler, to make it faster, to make it work well with Sonnet 4.5. And we saw better results on all our evals compared to this very complex version of Devin that we developed over the last year, right? And so now with Opus, with Opus, it gets even better and better, right? And so I think the models definitely have a lot to do with it, but giving the agent all the tools, all the arms, the legs, the same tools like a human would have to be able to see what it did and see it come to fruition and be able to iterate on that. I think that's going to allow these harnesses, these agents to take that next step and be able to accomplish the tasks in the right way, right? And with a high degree of confidence.
Yeah, verifiability is one that we're thinking about a lot. And our human engineers share Loom videos in their PRs, and we'd love to start to figure out how we can enable Devin to do the same.
I dream of the day that Devin's including a Loom recording of it, like showing the UI changes and the walkthrough in the PR description that it opens. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. We're running up on time. In fact, we're a little over. So I just want to say thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Eashan, for joining us. Some key takeaways, if you're still with us here. One, if you haven't given background coding agents a look in the past 6 to 8 months, definitely do so again. It's incredible how much they've progressed. Same goes for code review agents. 2, if you are new to the world of coding agents and you're trying to figure out how to get your feet wet, Foreground agents are a low risk, pretty easy way to get going. But know that the real unlock is once you start parallelizing your work, changing engineer behavior, and going from flow state serial development to parallel development, hopping between many asynchronous threads. That's where we've seen the biggest gains. And finally, while companies like Cognition are making awesome strides in the world of building agents to help onboard you and give their agents the tools that they need to be successful, I would not shy away from doing a little bit of upfront investment to build out the knowledge base or custom commands or scripts or whatever it is that's needed to really give these coding agents the tools they need to be successful. That little bit of upfront investment, especially if after you've proven some initial success through Foreground agents, is like crazy high leverage and has been really, really awesome for us. So Eashan, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us, man. We really, really appreciate it. I did not get a chance to shamelessly plug Vellum, but I would be remiss if I didn't share this slide. Vellum is a platform for building agents of your own, whether it's like the end intelligence backend to your own customer-facing product or more and more common internal automations and like business processes. Vellum's a natural language, low code, and code interface for developing your own agents internally. So we have a little discount code here and a QR code. Check us out. Eashan, Vargas, thank you both. And thank you for all that joined us today.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Vargas.
Everyone.
Take care, everyone. That's a wrap.